This is a brief overview of environmental law. We'll start small with municipal regulation and go upwards through state law to the federal environmental laws. Municipal land use regulation has a profound effect on business because you need permits to operate your business at whatever location you are in. Municipal land use regulation includes zoning, which dictates where in any given town certain uses like businesses or residences can be placed. And most Vermont towns have very small areas in which industry, for example, can be placed. Subdivision law, which relates to dividing up real estate parcels. If you're a land developer, you'll have to comply with subdivision regulations. And design and performance standards. Some towns, particularly with historic districts, have specific aesthetic design standards that buildings need to comply with. Looking at state regulation, we have Act 250, which is a statewide land use and development law. We have septic and stormwater regulation. So you need permits for stormwater, which is your rain runoff from your roof and parking lots, and septic permits for your operating septic systems. There are wetlands and riparian buffer protections. Those are things that say you can't develop or operate businesses within so many feet of wetlands and streams. There are health, safety, and building codes. Health codes particularly applying to things like food manufacturing, safety, including worksite safety, and building codes, including fire codes for commercial and residential rental properties. There are also special legal protections in Vermont for utilities and farms, and they are exempted from most of these other land use regulations that other types of businesses have to comply with. Moving up to the major federal environmental laws, there are a few here that protect air quality. One is the Clean Air Act, and another is greenhouse gas and climate change regulation, which is regulated primarily through treaties and incentives. The Clean Air Act basically assumes there's a bubble over a town or a city like Burlington and looks at the air quality, and if the air quality is poor, then any new development will have to prove that it's actually going to improve the air quality somehow. For example, by improving traffic circulation so that pollution from cars doesn't start stacking up. Federal environmental laws regarding water include the Clean Water Act, or CWA. It both requires permits if you are going to have a point source discharge. That is, if you have a factory that's, dumping its waste through a pipe into a lake, you need a permit for that, and you're probably going to have to clean up the outflow before it hits the water body. And it also has TMDL programs, or total maximum daily limit programs, such as the Lake Champlain phosphorus loading limit. And states get to run these unless they kind of blow it, and then the federal EPA takes over. There are also federal wetlands protections that, oddly enough, are regulated by the Army Corps of Engineers. And I think that originated from back in the day when the Army Corps of Engineers had a strong interest in making sure that bridges and stayed intact and that waterways remained navigable. TSCA, RCRA, and Superfund are federal environmental laws dealing with chemicals. RCRA, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, tracks chemicals from cradle to grave. You actually have a manifest that you carry along on a clipboard that follows chemicals from the point where they are produced to where they are disposed of, or at least that's the theory. Superfund, which pays for hazardous waste cleanup when locating or leveraging the polluter's payment is difficult, such as when a polluting business has gone out of business and there's nobody left to sue to clean up the toxic waste. And TSCA, the Toxic Substances Control Act, requires registration of all new chemicals with the EPA. This is just a little map of Superfund sites in Vermont. There are quite a few of them. The ones in Burlington are particularly bad, the Barge Canal being the largest. The ones that you see here marked in red are on the national priorities list, and you can just Google up what those are if any of them happen to be in your community. Some more federal environmental laws. NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, requires environmental review of all major federal actions significantly affecting the quality of the human environment, but it doesn't dictate an outcome. It just requires that agencies go through a process of looking at the environmental consequences of their acts. And the Endangered Species Act protects endangered and threatened species and their habitats, and there are actually very serious criminal penalties if you that is, if you destroy or kill or harass or capture endangered and threatened species. In terms of why we have these environmental laws, this was a 2014 article about a river catching fire in China because of the pollution being so intense in that river from flowing out of factories, solvents and oils flowing out of your manufacturing factories into the river. But we're not terribly behind that. If you think, well, China's all polluted, but we're so much better than that. Actually, our journey into adopting all these environmental laws started when the public was really outraged by our own river fire in 1969. Got a little picture there of toxic algae in Lake Champlain due to phosphorus loading, that is, of pollution of the lake due to excessive nutrients. That is both from sewage treatment plants and from farm runoff, both in terms of manure and excess fertilizers like lawn fertilizers. Creates an algae in Lake Champlain that is actually toxic. It's killed some dogs and can cause some serious human health issues. That's why beaches are being closed like crazy in Lake Champlain. So it's a very serious environmental issue in our own backyards. The major current issues in environmental law are climate change and who should address it and how. The U.S., as you know, pulled out of the International Climate Change Accord, and although many states are still adopting, including Vermont, have adopted climate change goals and policies that guide a lot of development decisions. Energy development and usage, issues like fracking has been totally exempted from environmental protection laws. So there are conflicts regarding fracking polluting drinking water wells all over the country. And also in Vermont, there's been controversies regarding development of alternative energy like ridgetop wind turbines, or solar that is placed in things like prime agricultural soils or wetlands. The use of farmland for energy, again, as I said, the question of converting agricultural use to solar, but also the issue of growing corn for ethanol, and receiving farm subsidies when it's actually an energy fuel production. And this issue has also been raised in some of our international treaties in terms of U.S. support for farms that are producing fuel rather than food. And then water quality and water access is a huge issue, as you've seen in things like Flint, Michigan, where water quality, and in Vermont as well with PFOA pollution in our drinking water access. So these are all major current issues in environmental law.